So today we are talking about volumes of prisms. Specifically, we want to look at rectangular prisms and triangular prisms. So you might be asking yourself, what is a prism? Well, a prism has two congruent parallel bases. So looking at this rectangular prism down here, what it means is that these rectangular bases, they are congruent to each other and they are parallel to each other. The lateral faces of a prism are also rectangular. So the top and the bottom of the sides of this prism are all rectangular. That's true for the triangular prism as well. Now, for the triangular prism, the bases are triangular. They're still congruent and they're still parallel to each other. They're just triangles. And the lateral faces of the triangular prism are rectangles. See? I'm coloring them red. So now you know what a prism is. One thing you may have noticed is that the base of a prism is not always on the bottom. The bases can be on the top and bottom, or they could be on the sides. The key is that the bases are always parallel to each other and they're always congruent to each other. That's how you can recognize them. Now let's talk about how to find the volume of a prism. That means the amount of space inside the prism. Well, the formula for the volume of a prism is that the volume equals big B times H. Well, what are big B and H? Big B refers to the area of the base of the prism, and H refers to the height of the prism. Now, the height of the prism is specifically talking about the distance between the bases. To illustrate what I mean here, let's talk about you. Your height is the distance from the top of your head to the bottom of your shoes. Now, your head is not parallel or congruent to your shoes all the time, but we can still use this as an example. That's your height, right? And sometimes you're standing up, but not always. Sometimes you take a nap. Well, when you're napping, does your height change? No, it does not. Your height is still the distance between the top of your head and the bottom of your shoes. The same thing is true for prisms. So let me draw the heights on these prisms. Here are the heights. So remember, the height is the distance between the bases. So it's not always up and down. It just depends on where your bases are. Now we understand the pieces of the formula, so let's go ahead and use the formula to find the volume of some prisms. And I'm going to follow these steps right here to find these volumes. So let's start out with the rectangular prism. So first I'm going to shade my bases. I used the top and the bottom. For a rectangular prism, it really doesn't matter which sides I chose to call my bases because all the sides are rectangular and the opposite faces are all parallel and congruent to each other. I just chose the top and the bottom this time. So now that I've made that choice, I can write down my formula and substitute some values in here. I know that the volume is equal to the area of the base times the height. Well, here's the base of my prism. So that means my base, the area of that rectangle, would be 5 times 5, or 25. And I know the height of my prism is right here. It's 5. That's the distance between my bases. So the volume is going to be 25. That's big B. That's the area of my base, times 5. That's the height, the distance between the bases. And multiplying that all together, I get 125 cubic inches. So now let's look at the triangular prism. So in this case, I do need to be mindful when I select my bases. They need to be triangles. So here they are. These are my only two triangular bases. And they are congruent to each other. And they are parallel to each other. So when I'm looking for the area of my base, I'm going to be looking for the area of those triangles. So let me write down my formula. It's the same as before, and this time the area of my base is going to be 1/2 times the base of the triangle times the height of the triangle. So look out, we have two different heights here. The first one is talking about the height of the prism, and the second one is talking about the height of the triangle. So those are two different numbers. Okay, well, I can see the height of my triangle is 8 feet. I'm going to put a triangle there so that I recognize that that one is talking about the height of the triangle. And the base of the triangle is 6 feet. This 12, that's the distance between my bases. So that one's the height of the pyramid. Cool. So what's that 10 doing there? It's just trying to distract you. Scratch it out. You don't need that. It's not part of the area of the base, and it's not part of the height of the prism. So we don't need it. So now let's find the area of our base. Well, it's going to be 1/2 times 6 times 8. That's 1/2 of 48. That's 24. Cool. And we said that the height of our prism is 12. So when we do the volume, we're going to multiply 24 times 12. Hey, that is 288 cubic feet. And that's the volume of our triangular prism.